The funeral flowers had barely wilted when the phone calls began. 3 weeks had passed since we buried my mother, and yet the scent of lilies still lingered faintly in the hallway. I stood in my Portland kitchen on a gray Tuesday morning, staring at the steam rising from a cup of coffee I hadn't touched. The mug said "Best Mom Ever," a gift from my daughter Melissa years ago. But in my hands, it felt foreign now. Everything felt foreign. The house, my reflection in the mirror, even the sound of my own voice when I finally picked up the phone. "Mom, we need to talk about the house." My son Ethan's voice came through the line, clipped and impatient. He was 35 now, married, and always in a rush. That same tone had followed him since his teenage years, when he used to demand money for gas or a new pair of sneakers. Except now, he wasn't asking. He was declaring. I set the mug down on the counter, watching the ring it left on the tile. "Good morning to you too, Ethan." "Don't start with me," he snapped. "Melissa and I talked. This place is too big for you. It's not sustainable. The upkeep, the bills." "There's no mortgage," I said quietly. The words came out flat, factual, the kind of truth that ended conversations in the hospital where I'd worked for 3 decades. But with Ethan, it changed nothing. He laughed, sharp and dismissive. "Mom, please. You can't handle this house alone. It's time to be realistic. We're trying to help you." "Help me." I looked out the window at the garden I'd tended for 20 years. Roses needed pruning. The herb patch had gone wild. Tasks that once anchored me now looked like burdens stacked against my chest. My children didn't see that grief itself was the heaviest weight I carried. Melissa's voice joined the conversation later that afternoon, echoing Ethan's demands. "Mom, we're worried about you. It's not healthy, rattling around in that big house all by yourself. Ethan and I think it's time for you to consider moving in with me. The basement's finished. You'd have your own entrance, your own bathroom. It would be perfect." Her basement, the same one that flooded last spring, where she stored boxes of old Christmas ornaments and broken exercise equipment. How generous of her to offer. I pressed the phone to my ear, listening to my children plan my life like I was an elderly pet being relocated. My heart pounded, but my voice stayed calm. "And what exactly do you expect me to do with this house?" Ethan cleared his throat. "Funny you should ask. We've already found a buyer, cash offer. All you need to do is sign." The room spun. My fingers tightened on the phone. They had moved ahead without me, and I realized, with a jolt of cold clarity, that this was only the beginning. That night, after Ethan's smug words echoed themselves into silence, I wandered into my mother's study. The room smelled faintly of cedar and old paper, untouched since the day we carried her casket to the cemetery. Books still lined the shelves in neat rows, her handwriting etched in the margins of cookbooks and gardening guides. I switched on the desk lamp, its warm circle of light spilling across the mahogany surface, and sat down. For years, I'd avoided opening the bottom drawer of her desk. It had always been locked, the key tucked away in her jewelry box. Now, with trembling fingers, I found it resting beneath a strand of pearls I hadn't worn since the 80s. The key slid into the lock with a metallic sigh. When the drawer opened, it revealed neat stacks of envelopes, each one labeled in my mother's precise handwriting. Bank statements, investment portfolios, property deeds. I froze when I pulled out one envelope marked Harrington Trust. Inside was a thick folder of documents, all recent, all official, and at the very top lay a deed, embossed and notarized, bearing my name alone. It wasn't for the Portland house Ethan and Melissa had their eyes on. No, it was for a cabin property in Montana, nestled against the northern Rockies, fully paid off and registered under my name. A cabin I had never even known existed. My breath caught as I traced the address. A remote township I had only ever seen on maps, surrounded by endless forest and rivers that shimmered in photographs clipped to the deed. The folder also contained a series of account statements, savings accounts, small but steady dividends from stocks, and a maintenance trust tied directly to the cabin's upkeep. My mother had been meticulous. She had planned this, but why hadn't she told me? At the back of the drawer, beneath a pile of faded tax returns, I found something else. A cream-colored envelope, sealed with her initials. On the front, written in the careful script I knew from every birthday card she'd ever sent, were the words, "For your eyes only, Linda." My hands shook as I held it. I couldn't bring myself to tear it open yet, not tonight. Instead, I tucked it under my arm and looked around the study, as if her presence lingered in the corners. My mother, the woman who had raised me to stand tall, had hidden all this in plain sight. I leaned back in her chair, the weight of discovery pressing on my chest. Ethan and Melissa thought I was fragile, powerless, easy to manipulate, but they had no idea at all. The next morning the phone rang again. I already knew who it would be. Ethan never let more than 12 hours pass once he had a plan brewing. "Mom, we need to get serious," he began, not bothering with small talk. "Melissa and I talked it through. This house isn't practical for you anymore. It's time to think about the future." "My future or yours?" I asked softly. He ignored the jab. "You're 61. Living alone in that place will only get harder. Think of Melissa's kids. They need a stable future. Think of me and Lisa. We've been working toward buying a better home. Selling your place solves everything." My stomach twisted. So that was it. Not concern for me. Concern for their mortgages, their down payments, their convenience. That afternoon, Melissa called. Her voice was smoother, gentler, but I recognized the same sharp edge beneath it. "Mom, I know Ethan sounds harsh, but he's right. It isn't healthy being alone in that big house. Why not move in with me? The basement's finished. You'd have your own entrance, a bathroom. It would be perfect. You could even help with the boys when I'm at work." Her words struck me like a dull knife. The basement. A converted storage room with low ceilings and a draft that never fully went away. That was where they saw me, beneath them, out of sight, a caretaker for their children. "Melissa," I asked, "when was the last time you called me just to ask how I was, without needing money, babysitting, or a favor?" There was silence on the other end. Finally, she said, "This isn't about that, it's about what makes sense." I closed my eyes. "What makes sense to you, not to me?" The line crackled. Then Ethan's voice came back. Clearly they had me on speaker. "Mom, stop being dramatic. We've already met with Gregory, Melissa's friend in real estate. He has a buyer lined up. Cash, quick closing. This is the best opportunity you'll get." The words chilled me. They had sat at a table together without me, carving up my life as if I were already gone. My grief was still raw, but they treated me like an obstacle, not a mother. "And what happens to me during this quick closing?" I asked. "Where do I live while you pocket the money?" "You'll be with us," Melissa said quickly. "You'll never be alone again. Isn't that what you want?" I stared at the sealed envelope on my desk, the one marked, "For your eyes only." My mother had known. She had seen this future coming, and suddenly, I understood why she'd prepared so carefully. 2 days later, I found myself sitting in a leather chair across from Janet Monroe, my attorney for over 20 years. The office smelled faintly of lemon polish and old books, the kind of scent that made everything feel solid, undeniable. Janet adjusted her glasses and studied the folder I'd brought, the deeds, the statements, the sealed envelope. "Linda," she said after a long pause, "your mother was very deliberate. She left the Portland house and the Montana property solely in your name. Your children have no legal claim to either." The words should have brought relief, but instead they pressed on me like a weight. "Ethan and Melissa, they're already pushing. They've spoken to a realtor. They're telling me I don't have a choice." Janet's eyes hardened. "You do have a choice. They can't sell what they don't own." She tapped the cream-colored envelope, still sealed, resting on the desk between us. "And this, she left it for you. I suggest you read it." My fingers trembled as I broke the seal. Inside was a handwritten letter, my mother's careful script stretching across 3 pages. "My dearest Linda, if you are reading this, it means I am gone, and you are facing the world without me. I know Ethan and Melissa. I know their hunger. They will speak of your well-being, but what they truly want is control. Do not give it to them. I raised you to be stronger than that. I wiped at my eyes, forcing myself to keep reading. The house in Portland is yours, and the cabin in Montana was always meant for you. That cabin sits on land more valuable than it looks. Years ago, I negotiated a quiet arrangement with a mining surveyor. Beneath those mountains are deposits of rare minerals. I secured rights that protect you, not them. If you choose, it could provide for you for the rest of your life. But remember, the choice is yours. You are not a burden. You are not powerless. Live freely, Linda. Her words wrapped around me, firm and warm as her arms once had. I folded the letter slowly, as if it might shatter. Janet leaned forward. She anticipated this exact situation. Your children cannot touch these properties. You hold full ownership. And if that mineral reserve is as real as she suggests, you could be looking at extraordinary leverage. Extraordinary leverage. The phrase clung to me. My children thought they were circling a fragile woman ready to surrender. They had no idea the ground beneath their feet was worth far more than the house they schemed over. For the first time since the funeral, I felt something shift inside me. Not fear, not grief. Power. Saturday morning arrived with a knock that rattled the front door. I had barely finished labeling the last box, Ethan's childhood trophies, Melissa's forgotten piano books, when his voice boomed from the porch. "Mom, open up. We need to talk." I inhaled slowly, steadied myself, and opened the door. Ethan stood in a pressed suit, a manila folder clutched in his hand. Melissa hovered behind him, her arms crossed, her mouth tight with impatience. They looked less like children visiting their mother and more like creditors come to collect a debt. "What's all this?" Ethan's eyes flicked to the boxes stacked neatly in the hallway. His voice rose. "Why are you packing?" "I thought you might want your things back," I said evenly. "Memories are precious. Better they're in your homes than rotting in my attic." Melissa's brow furrowed. "You're making this harder than it has to be. Ethan has the papers ready. Gregory's client is waiting for your signature. We can close in 3 weeks." I gestured to the living room. "Come in." They followed me, their energy sharp, filling the space where laughter used to live. Ethan slapped the folder onto the coffee table. "All you need to do is sign. You'll be set. We'll take care of everything." I sat down slowly in Russell's old armchair, the one Ethan used to climb into with a blanket after bad dreams. "Tell me something," I said. "When you had dinner together last week, did either of you ask how I was doing without your grandmother? Did you ask if I was sleeping, eating, if I needed company?" Ethan shifted in his seat. Melissa opened her mouth, then closed it. Silence. "No," I said softly. "You spent the whole evening dividing me like an estate. You weren't planning my future. You were planning your payday." "That's not fair," Melissa snapped. "We're trying to make sure you're safe." "Safe?" I leaned forward. "You want me in your basement, Melissa. The same basement that floods every spring. You want my house turned into your down payment. And Ethan," I met his eyes. "You've already promised money that doesn't belong to you." Ethan's face flushed. "You don't understand, Mom. This is bigger than you." "No," I interrupted, my voice like steel. "This is exactly my size, because this house, this life, belongs to me." I reached for the folder and slid it back across the table, toward them. "I will not sign. Not now. Not ever." Melissa's mouth fell open. Ethan's jaw tightened, his knuckles white against his knees. "I am moving," I added, standing tall. "But not into your basement, not anywhere you decide." Their confusion was almost sweet. And for the first time, I felt the thrill of a secret they knew nothing about. I rose before dawn the following Tuesday. The house was quiet, the kind of silence that presses against your chest. But my mind buzzed with clarity. A moving truck waited at the curb, its headlights glowing faintly in the fog. I had hired them quietly the day before, cash up front, no questions asked. The driver tipped his cap. "Where are these boxes headed, ma'am?" "To my children," I replied, handing him 2 addresses, neatly written on separate slips of paper. The first load goes to Ethan's house, the second to Melissa's. Tell them these are gifts from their mother, memories they'll want to keep safe. He raised an eyebrow but didn't comment. Professional men who'd seen their share of family drama. Inside, I pulled the final suitcase from the closet. Russell's photograph slipped out of a side pocket. Our only trip to the coast. His arm around me, both of us laughing. I pressed the picture to my chest before tucking it back inside. Then I locked the front door behind me, the sound echoing like a final punctuation mark. By the time Ethan's car screeched into the driveway, I was already on the road. My phone buzzed furiously in the passenger seat, his name flashing again and again. I didn't answer. Instead, I drove north, mile after mile, until the city shrank into forest and mountains. The cabin was exactly as the photographs had promised. Whitewashed logs, a stone chimney, and a porch that faced endless trees. A narrow river glittered behind it, catching the morning light. For a long moment, I simply stood there, letting the air fill my lungs. It smelled of pine and freedom. "Mrs. Harrington," a voice startled me. An older couple emerged from the path, a man with weathered hands, a woman with kind eyes. "We're the Myers. We've been looking after the place. Your mother asked us to keep it in good shape." I blinked back, Gastin, sudden tears. "She never told me. She wanted you to discover it when the time was right," Mrs. Myers said gently. "She called it your Freedom House." They walked me through the cabin. Polished floors, a stocked pantry, beds made with fresh linens. It felt lived in, cared for, as if waiting just for me. Then Mr. Myers cleared his throat. "One more thing, Mrs. Harrington. Last month a man came by, said he was from a mining company. He asked if the land was for sale." My pulse quickened. "And what did you tell him?" "That it wasn't ours to sell." He handed me a business card, the company name bold across the top. "But he'll be back. You should be ready." I closed my hand around the card, my mother's words from the letter echoing in my mind. This was only the beginning. The card burned in my palm as I stared at the bold black letters, Silver Ridge Mining Corporation. I had never heard of them, but my mother's letter had whispered enough for me to understand the weight. Rare minerals, a fortune buried beneath my feet. 2 days later, I agreed to meet their representative at a diner in the nearest town. The man introduced himself as Richard Hale, mid-40s, dressed in a crisp suit that looked out of place among the booths and checkered floors. He shook my hand with practiced confidence. "Mrs. Harrington," he said, "thank you for coming. Your land is very important. Our surveys indicate deposits of rare earth elements, essential for modern technology, batteries, electronics, even defense contracts. If you're willing, we can make an offer." He slid a folder across the table. The numbers on the first page made my breath catch. Millions. More than I'd ever seen written in my name. But then his words shifted. "Of course, we'll need signatures from all co-owners. Your children, for instance. I assume they're involved?" I closed the folder slowly. "No, they are not." He blinked. "But surely you wouldn't manage this alone?" "I manage my life alone every day," I said, steel threading through my voice. "The deeds are in my name only. My children have no legal claim." The confidence in his smile faltered. He adjusted his tie. "I see." Before I could press further, the diner door swung open. Ethan stormed in, Melissa on his heels. My stomach dropped. They had tracked me here. "Mom," Ethan hissed, ignoring Richard completely. "What are you doing? Why are you meeting with this man?" Melissa's eyes darted to the folder. She paled. "Is this about the cabin?" "You didn't tell us." "You never asked," I said coldly. Richard looked between us, clearly unsettled. Ethan slammed his fist against the table. "You're not thinking straight. You'll ruin everything. Sign the deal. Let us handle it." "Handle it?" I pulled my phone from my purse, pressed play, and let the recording spill into the air. The calls where they spoke of selling my house without consent, shoving me into Melissa's basement, carving up my future like scraps from a meal. Richard's expression hardened as the words echoed. "Mrs. Harrington. If these recordings are authentic, then I suggest we continue discussions privately. Your children clearly have no standing. Ethan's face drained of color. Melissa clutched his arm, whispering frantically. I gathered the folder, sliding it back into my bag. This is my decision, mine alone. And for the first time, my children had nothing left to say. Spring melted into summer, and the cabin became my sanctuary. The air was sharper there, cleaner, as though every breath rinsed grief from my lungs. I met again with Richard Hale, this time in Janet's office, not a diner. With legal counsel at my side, the conversation shifted. No longer was I the widow they assumed they could pressure. I was the landowner, the decision-maker. The agreement we shaped was deliberate. I refused a lump sum buyout. Instead, we negotiated a long-term lease, royalties guaranteed for decades, oversight clauses written in ink that could not be bent. My mother's force society had placed me in a position of strength, and I would not squander it. Meanwhile, Ethan and Melissa flailed. They attempted to contest the will, but Janet dismantled their claims in a single afternoon. No legal standing, she told the judge, her voice sharp as glass. The case collapsed before it began. My children had spent months circling like vultures, and now they were left with nothing but their own hunger. One evening, just as the sun bled orange across the tree line, a car pulled up the gravel drive. From it stepped Claire, Melissa's oldest daughter. She looked nervous, clutching her backpack as though it might anchor her. "Grandma," she said, her voice small. "Can I stay a while?" I opened my arms. She rushed into them, and the hug was not polite or obligatory. It was desperate, real. We sat on the porch while she explained how the truth had unraveled, how Melissa and Ethan had raged about betrayal, how neighbors whispered, how Claire had finally listened to the recordings I had shared with Janet. "They lied to me," she whispered. "They said you were fragile, that you couldn't handle yourself, but you're the strongest person I know." Oh. Tears stung my eyes. Strength comes when you've been left with no other choice. She stayed a week, helping in the garden, learning to cook her great-grandmother's recipes from the notebooks left behind. Every night we sat beneath the stars, and I saw in her eyes the spark of something different, respect. As she left, she hugged me again. "Thank you for showing me what family is supposed to mean." Later, walking alone along the river, I carried my mother's letter in my pocket. The paper was worn now, edges softened from constant rereading. Her words echoed in my chest. "Live freely, Linda." I finally understood. Family is not who demands your sacrifice. Family is who stands beside you when you reclaim yourself. And for the first time in decades, I was not surviving. I was living.